I see familiar faces here. Every year we come down to the Knoll to pay tribute to the late President John Kennedy. But very, very few people here today were here on that day 40 years ago. I know that these people would love to hear some of what you have to say. No one here can bring us back to that day and time. Although it's very emotional for you, I would like for you to share with us all here today. Just about this time, 40 years ago, you were standing out there with the film camera. Would you tell us about it?
I had come down that day for one reason only, to see the President of the United States. A young, vivacious, vigorous, and I thought honest and integrity, a man with a lot of integrity. I was very enthused that I had a president that was born in my century. Forget my generation. He was born in my century. And I came down from the Colony Club where I worked and made my way down here. I had no intentions of coming down here, but for those Texans who hated Kennedy so badly, you couldn't get up to the curb to get a picture of him. So I had to walk the 10 blocks down here, and I came from Commerce across the grassy place, and I looked for a place where there was very few people so that I could get up close to the curb and get a picture, some film of my beloved president. And I stood right over there. And I was so excited. There's no way to explain to you the excitement that was in the air that day. Have you ever been in a situation where the hair on the back of your neck stood up? And it was just that kind of day. It was like the air was filled with static electricity. And you could tell when the president was getting closer because the clapping and the yelling and the "Hello, Mr. President" got louder and louder, and he made the turn on to Houston. And I was just getting more excited and more excited. And then I saw them start to make the turn around to come onto Elm Street, and I started filming. And right after he made the turn onto Elm Street, there was 3 noises that went bang, bang, bang. And they kind of sounded like those little things that kids throw on the sidewalk and they pop. And I wasn't aware that anything had happened. I didn't notice his hands up to his neck. But then as he got past me, and I'm still filming, there was a horrific noise that went ba-boom. And the whole back of a president's head went out over the back of the car. It looked like a bucket of blood that went out. And I was absolutely in shock. I don't know how long I stood over there because I couldn't move. People asked me, well, did the limousine stop? I don't know. Everything stopped for me. And it's still horrific memories for me. I was 17 years old. I still have nightmares about it. And that's one of the reasons why that I go the places I do and talk mainly to young people at schools and things, because they're the torch that we're going to have to pass this on to. And it's been, one of the reasons is because I don't think America is ever going to be what we can until we stand accountable for our past. We have to be, until we stand accountable for our past, we can't move forward as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And that means presidents. And I'm going to continue to have those nightmares until I know who killed my president at high noon in Dallas, Texas. So please, I beg you, don't let it die. Don't let his memory die with the 22nd of the 40th anniversary. Keep telling people, tell your children what happened, because you can't fix something if you don't know it's wrong. So please, let us have a torch to pass it to. Thank you for being here today.
Ladies and gentlemen, Beverly Oliver. On January 20th, 1961, from our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., we heard those words, "The torch has been passed to a new generation." We who have researched this for a long time see a new generation of researchers and students that are interested in the events that happened here 40 years ago today. And I personally have spent 35 years as a student of the assassination of President Kennedy, and only in the last several years have I found it much easier to be able to study and to keep up with the new developments. And one of those sources, the source, is a website called JFK Lancer. I encourage everyone to remember that or write it down. www.jfklancer.com. And the lady who is responsible for running that successful organization is Deborah Conway. And I wish that you would give her a big round of applause, as I believe she is a tremendous service to those of us who are studying those events today.
Thank you, Jim. And I sincerely thank each and every one of you for being here with us in Dealey Plaza today. I am not a college graduate. I have never written a book. I'm just a mother, a housewife, and someone who cares deeply about our country. As a small child, I read about President Kennedy, saw him on television, saw his wife, their family, and saw the devastation in the world when he was assassinated here. I spent many, many years studying on my own as just a citizen, a young girl, and not until I was an adult did I realize how many people felt the same way that I did. And so I started JFK Lancer to give us all a place to meet in the virtual world of the internet, and once a year at our conference here called November in Dallas. This is our 9th year of our organization, and I think that our group of researchers from around the world that are here today have made tremendous strides in bringing you information about the assassination and President Kennedy's administration. Because of the movie JFK and the resulting JFK Act, we have millions of documents to review. We have new witnesses that have come forward. We have photographs that have been discovered. We have tremendous opportunity with today's technology to be able to find out exactly what happened here. Now, I have something I'd like to say to the media. I'm so happy to see you here today, but where have you been for 40 years? Amen. Where have you been when Jean Hill spoke to school children year after year, saying how many shots she heard? More than 3. Where were you year after year when Nellie Connolly said the first shot that hit the president did not hit my husband? Where were you when Jim Tague had to use his reporter friends to keep the story alive that he was also wounded here that day? He was standing over there. There was a missed shot that wounded him. There was not a single bullet that went through these men and then somehow hit Mr. Tague. So where were you when we were counting shots and it came up to 4? I don't know if Peter Jennings is here today, but if he is, where have you been, Mr. Jennings, for 40 years?
Yeah. Canada. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if Dan Rather is here today. You were here 40 years ago, but where have you been for 40 years? There is more than enough evidence in this case to settle it for once and for all, to admit that there was more than one shooter, there was more than one crime scene, and there was more than 3 victims. We're all victims. I sincerely hope that those of you here today will continue to study what happened so that we can resolve this. We don't need the media. We've done all right without them, but it sure is good when they're here. It's good that you're here. And let's keep this going until it's resolved for history's sake and for our country's sake, for our planet's sake, because we all share this same planet. We all breathe the same air. We all love our children. And we will be back at 12 o'clock for the remembrance ceremony, so we invite you to stay around and be back right here at noon. Thank you very much.
Deborah, there for the younger generation here today, of course, it's important that so many researchers throughout the years have spent their own money, their own resources on studying this. The government has not helped them in any way. And their work just mistakenly called entrance wounds. I don't believe that at all, especially when you understand that Parkland Memorial was a trauma hospital. These doctors were not seeing wounds they had never seen before. They knew what they were talking about. When he said an entrance wound, he meant an entrance wound. And the other source is the information that has recently come out through the JFK Records Collection Act. There is so much there. And I encourage you to go to your websites. You can go through the Lancer site and access some of those documents. Why do we continue to talk to schools and universities and gatherings of people? It's important to me that the up-and-coming generations understand the truth of what happened here 40 years ago, because we had a disruption of our democratic process on that day. Somebody wrote a book called Government by Gunplay, and that's exactly what it was. We invite you to stay with us as you continue to gather. At high noon, we're going to have other speakers, including a gentleman who was also here on the day President Kennedy was assassinated. Thank you.
Mike, you ready? Yeah.
Hi, Mike. My name's Ron Nelson. JFK tour. I used to give a tour of the assassination sites for 3 years. The tour about 4 years ago and I went to it. So I'm going to watch tours down here at Dealey Plaza now. I was here for the tour. The tour lasted 2 hours. It starts with a 30-minute walking tour of the plaza area. Continues with an hour and a half driving tour of the assassination sites.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
The reason you haven't seen it is only one TV show in the world has interviewed us to show that film. And every year I send them copies of this or the newspaper articles. And you can see Zapruder jumping down off the pedestal. If Zapruder jumps down, that means he just shut his camera off. If he just shut his camera off, that means that nobody else had a chance to get back up here. And then on the other side of the film, you'll see the red circle enhancement. Those are flashes of light from someone behind that fence.
Whoa, I just saw it.
And that's never been shown on a Kennedy documentary, these flashes. Now that's somebody back there.
I was just down in the LBJ library and went through their little November 22nd thing. They have a blow-up, this huge blow-up of the Mormon photograph. And you can see it's almost there behind the fence. It's just, you know, if you know what to look for, it's just right there.
Yeah, there's
going to have a countdown to 12:30 noon, but I do want to draw your attention down at the foot of the knoll. Mr. and Mrs. Ed Hoffman are placing a wreath, a commemorative wreath, to President John F. Kennedy. Mr. Hoffman, for those of you who have seen some of the documentaries like The Men Who Killed Kennedy, will recognize him surely. And I think the other significance is that he and his wife were married on this date. But that is Mr. and Mrs. Hoffman.
So you're telling me through all this chaos, one person is missing at that work, and they put APBs out on all these people? No, they didn't. They put it out on one person. Why didn't they put it out on everybody that was missing that?
He was the only one missing. No, they said there were on account of him. He was one of them. How many? They didn't say how many.
Well, then why would they send his description out if there were more people missing?
About an hour and a half.
Sure you do. Sure you do. Sure you do. Yes, you do. We're getting to it. Yes, you do. No, it's common sense. Common sense. View it from common sense. Nothing adds up with common logic. It don't add up. Well, let me put it to you this way. After he's arrested, let's say hypothetically, why would he use the term Nazi? Why would that word come out of him? When the press first said in terms, I'm just a Nazi. If he did this alone, why would he use that term?
Governor, do you want to get up there for Let's go.
But I mean, why would he use the term Nazi? You know, why? To describe himself. And plus, if he did it, wouldn't he want the world to know? He did it for a cause. He would stand up and say,
ring at his wife's house. $170. Take off the ring and
well, how about the guy who gave the black work that said the guns was an
he told me personally they were steel frame.
So it was too short. The package was too short anyway.
2 feet long. There's Mount.
I'm following you.
Governor of the Warren Commission didn't call one of those guys.
He claims it's all right with this thing. Correct. And a guy walking towards the railroad tracks, inside a storage box.
Oh, you gotta read Bar McClellan. It just came out with it. Bar McClellan, Scott McClellan's dad. Scott McClellan is the spokesperson for President Bush right now. This is his father. His father was with the law firm with Ed Clark from 66 to 78. And he says unequivocally Lyndon Baines Johnson killed President Kennedy. That's what Bar McClellan says. And he was in the law firm, and he said that Ed Clark was there when Clark got his $2 million payoff. He helped get it for him in the early 70s for doing the job. Well, he also says in the book, he said there was an ATF agent that was killed years ago. They called it suicide. In the 1980s, it was brought back up in front of the grand jury. They declared it a homicide. And Johnson, Clark, and Wallace were all indicted for murder, but they couldn't serve the indictment because they're all dead. So it wasn't like he hadn't killed before. One of those 5 gunshot suicides, right?
Mom. I was going, I don't know, I've lost it. Who's doing that? Yeah, those were at 12
People that you will hear from today, some of those were here 40 years ago, on November 22nd, 1963, and we'll share that with you. I'm right now looking for Mr. James Tague. Jim Tague, if you're here, would you please come up to our table? Jim Tague. We'll get started in just a second.
Probably about
Was he the photographer?
And then I was like, good luck tonight. Doesn't know.
We ask that if you are unable to hear us very well, probably coming on into the center would be better for you. We thank you all for joining us here today. It's a very special occasion for many who have been studying and researching the events of November 22nd, 1963, as well as those of you who are just getting into the aspects of the Kennedy assassination. I will tell you this, that you're going to hear a lot of things while you're here in Dallas this weekend. And a lot of things may be favorable and some may not be. Many years ago when I interviewed former New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison, Jim said when he started his investigation in 1967 that he and his office were very naive in the sense that they had no idea where their investigation would lead. He saw news media from all over the country converging on New Orleans at that time. And he was elated thought that the media had come to help him in his investigation. It turned out that it was just the opposite. Many media sources back then were the help of destroying, so to speak, Mr. Garrison's investigation. And when I asked him about that, he said that one primary reason he felt was in 1967, when he was talking about things that were not in the Warren Commission report, he sounded unpatriotic. And to some today, some of what you might hear may sound that way as well. But I want to tell you on behalf of myself, an individual student and researcher for 35 years, as well as Deborah Conway and the people at JFK Lancer, it is because we love our country that we are here today. And I'm sure that all of you feel the same. We're going to begin our program right now, and with a countdown to 12:30 noon, we're going to start our program with Beverly Oliver. Again, for those of you who have just joined us, Beverly was here on that day 40 years ago shooting film from the median, shooting this way. She's going to share with us one of her many talents, and that is a song. Ladies and gentlemen, some call her the Babushka Lady. We call her Beverly Oliver, our friend, and she's got a great song for you.
That is her.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what surprise way o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, Beverly. For many years after the assassination of President Kennedy, on this day, my little friend, Penn Jones Jr., would gather here with people just like yourselves on the Knoll and pay tribute to President Kennedy. And I would ask that we continue Penn's way of showing our love for this country and the 35th President of the United States by taking just one moment out for some silence, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you now the lady who spearheads and makes things happen at JFK Lancer. Again, for those of you who leave Dallas, Texas this weekend, and there's a whole lot more information about the events that happened here 40 years ago that you'd like to know, simply go to her website, www.jfklancer.com, and I guarantee you it is going to be the only source that you need, as they will link you to all of the past investigations as well as the latest documentation that has been released through the JFK Records Collection Act. Ladies and gentlemen, Deborah Conway.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all for being here today. What I'd like to do is go back to the 60s and do something that we used to do when we had events against the war. And that's do a cheer. So I need you to all work with me now and tell me why you're here. I know why I'm here, and that's because I want the truth. I want the truth. Come on. I want the truth. I want the truth. I want the truth. You hear me over there? I want the truth. You hear me over there? Want the truth. Do you hear me in Washington? We want the truth. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to introduce a teacher from the state of Kansas. He was known as Teacher of the Year and has some very important information and interesting comments to make. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Taylor.
On this exact spot, in this time, in this place, a great light was extinguished. It was, as many have said, for one brief and shining moment in the steady march of history, a brilliant star that shone forth as a beacon of hope for all of mankind. But just as a star whose life burned out millennia ago, the light from this heavenly raiment continues to illuminate the best of human ambitions, desires, and dreams. For those of you who are younger and were not fortunate enough to have been alive while President Kennedy inspired this nation and the world, one need only view the photographs and watch the films to see how much the people love this man. However, it was not just the charm and charisma of John F. Kennedy that drew people to him, but it was the strength of his words which lit the fires of hope in the hearts of men and women around the world. Indeed, those words have survived beyond his mortal being and continue to draw us to his immortal soul. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy is now a legend for the ages, and just as his life provided us with comfort against the apocalyptic darkness, so too will the resolution of the mystery surrounding his death serve to protect us from the long shadows of crisis and conflict. For a moment, let us listen to some of President Kennedy's words, so that on the 40th anniversary of his death, we may use them both as a shield to give us hope for humanity on the one hand, and as a sword to give us the courage to smite the bodyguard of lies surrounding his death on the other hand. What kind of peace do I mean? What kind of peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace. The kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living. The kind that enables men and nations to grow into hope and to build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace for all time. So let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interests and to the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we're all mortal. We in this country, in this generation, are by destiny rather than choice, the watchmen on the walls of world freedom. We ask, therefore, that we may be worthy of our power and responsibility, that we may exercise our strength with wisdom and restraint, and that we may achieve in our time and for all time the ancient vision of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. That must always be our goal, and the righteousness of our cause must always underlie our strength. For as it was written long ago, except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh in vain. Is there an honest man or woman among us that can deny that those selected passages from President Kennedy's aforementioned speeches stand in sharp contrast to events in the world today? To further dramatize the power of President Kennedy's words, slight modifications can sometimes serve as a weapon to defend historical truth. Here is such an example using President Kennedy's Berlin Wall speech. There are many people in the world who really don't understand, or say they don't, what is the great issue between the Warren Commission apologists and the assassination research community. Let them come to the grassy knoll. There are some who say that lies are the wave of the future. Let them come to the grassy knoll. And there are even a few who say that it is true lies are evil, but it permits us to protect our national security. Let them come to the grassy knoll. In conclusion, I would like to end with a poem by Emily Dickinson. President Kennedy loved poetry, and so it is fitting that this memorial speech to his life and the battle for truth behind his death should end this way. Luck is not chance, it's toil. Fortune's expensive smile is earned. I took one draught of life I'll tell you what I paid, precisely in existence. The market price, they said. They weighed me, dust by dust. They balanced me, film by film. They handed me my being's worth, a single dram of heaven. That such have died enable us, the tranquiler, to die. That such have lived, certificate for immortality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark Taylor. Through the years, there have been many presidents that have been talked about and the way that they made America feel good about America. But we have one president who made the world feel good about America, and that was John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And it's one of the reasons why we are here today. We would like to take this opportunity to welcome the international community, because not only here in America, but across the globe for the last 4 decades, people have been on the same quest that we have been on, for the truth of what happened on this date 40 years ago. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a man who has spent a lot of time researching and studying and wants to speak to you now. He is from Great Britain. Welcome, Ian Griggs.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you. This is not my first time up here speaking like this. I've been doing this for about 6 or 8 years, and every year it's an emotional period, an emotional time. I come from England, I represent England. I like to think I represent Europe, the rest of the world. I'm at the Glasgow conference, and I'm delighted to say that I'm accompanied by over 20 other British researchers. This is our record. We've also got 2 Australians there. We meet people here from all over the world. We care as well. We care too. We want to know why, who, will it ever happen again? We want to know. It's not only on this side of the big pond, but throughout the world. He was your president, but he was our leader. And those days in '63, I was 23 when it happened, so I can remember my feelings, my emotions, and after a couple of days, my doubts. They told us this guy, this loner, this Tommy, this wife beater did it. He didn't do it. We knew that in England 2 days later. I don't know what it is about conspiracies. Maybe we're more used to them in Europe, in England. But to us, the Warren Commission was rubbish from day one. We knew that. And I am delighted to be a member of this research community, still after 40 years, striving to bring out the truth. And we will bring it out, because shows like this, they can't ignore us forever, can they? No. Deborah started it off with a chant. I'm not going to do that, but we can quote from other people. We will overcome. We will, because we have numbers, we have faith, and we have God. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are very fortunate today to have a prominent figure, a national figure, who has joined us today, would like to address you. We're proud to have him on our side. I was a wrestling announcer for Gulf Coast Wrestling and Cowboy Bill Watts for many years, so I feel very comfortable in saying, weighing in on our side today, this no-holds-barred guy, ladies and gentlemen, the former governor, the state of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura.
Thank you. I'd just like to take a moment and say, am I the only elected official that dared come here today? Is this it? Where's the governor of Texas? All right, well, anyway, though I'm not the governor anymore, I'm a civilian now. But they do tell you you're always the governor, you're just not the current one. So there you go. But on a serious note, I came here today because this is the 40th anniversary. I was 12 years old when President Kennedy was shot and killed right here. a matter of about probably 15 minutes from now, 40 years ago. I felt compelled to come here today. I feel compelled, and I feel, you know, when I won the election in Minnesota, I felt strongly the American dream was still alive. That someone like me, with no political background, no political party, could become the governor of one of our 50 states, and it happened. So that gives me the hope that when I come out here today and I see a gathering like this, that eventually we will prevail and the truth shall prevail, because the truth will release us all. But I want to just say we have to keep this up. The vigilance must stay. We get no help from the government. We get no help from mainstream media. But yet it lives on and will live on and must live on through generations and generations, until our government will finally come out and admit to us that the Warren report was false. So again, God bless everyone. Please stand up proud and remember that what makes America great is the fact that you can disagree, that you can protest.
How's your trip to Cuba?
My trip to Cuba was great. Do you want to know about that? Very quickly, I'm the only elected official who currently elected went and sat face to face with Fidel Castro. I asked Castro specifically the last 20 minutes what he knew about this particular day in '63, and for what it's worth, Castro assured me he did not do it. Go ahead, you can laugh. He also told me the Russians didn't do it. In fact, Castro's quote to me was that the Russians told him, "You can talk to this man," meaning Kennedy. What happened on this day, November the 22nd, Castro told me at that moment Kennedy had sent a European reporter to meet with him. And Castro firmly believed that President Kennedy quite possibly was going to take a new position on Cuba. Well, we all know 40 years later, there are a lot of people that still do not want us taking a new position on Cuba today, let alone 30 or 40 years ago. And so my meeting with Castro was very interesting, because he said a couple things to me. His number one thing was, he said, Oswald could not make the shot. That's what Castro felt. He said that it happened internally, and that was his position, and I did my homework, and I found out that yes, indeed, it was true, that that reporter was with Castro at the moment Kennedy was killed, and I found out that Castro's quote at that point in time was, "This is very, very bad." And Castro also told me he didn't do it because he said if I had, Cuba wouldn't exist today. It would have been blown off the face of the earth, and I tend to agree with him. He's not a stupid man. He knows where his bread is buttered. Anyway, again, I'm going to end. Thank you very much. It's terrific to be here in Dallas, and we have to live on and keep this going until we get the truth. Thank you.
From Minnesota to Cuba to the grassy knoll, perhaps one day we can say to Washington, D.C., Jesse Ventura. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, gathered here today for one reason and one reason only. That is the love that we had for the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. And for those of you who have followed us here for the last 4 decades, know the reason why we're here today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call up next Mr. Bob Cochran. He is a JFK collector and researcher, and he has a very special prayer for us.
Kiss the microphone.
This is a great honor for me. It's good to see all you people here. I hope you keep coming here. We stand. Lost it. We stand here. Sorry. We stand here today in quiet reverence on the very location where John F. Kennedy was shot and killed. His assassination marks in time a powerful moment that changed the complexion of the world. His greatness remains. Confidence in this great country still seeks those willing to give their lives for that which is beyond cost. As the test of time comes full circle, slow to the whisper of truth that stills the heart and quickens the spirit. The principle of light is the formation of positive value moving in the same direction. Let us part from here knowing that the light of Camelot has not dimmed and shines on. Let us remember with fondness the martyred soul that continues to bless his country with the values he stood for. Camelot lives on in our minds and in our hearts, most of all in the spirit of youth, protecting our future from the tyrant rule. Please bow your heads. Oh dear Lord, allow us this moment to sing out to this world that which can be lost in our hunger for power. For injustice only serves to damage the fiber of life, so precious in your sight. Help us to reach to you, Heavenly Father, for those answers still left fleeting. Let John Kennedy's memory ignite the flame of truth within our hearts. Help us see the good in life, dear Lord, to live in gratitude for a country that allows our sorrow to speak freely to all the world. Let our tears spawn the fiber of hope and the faith of knowing that his presence remains forever in your sight. May we depart from here just a little richer than we came, remembering a man that gave his life for our well-being. Bless this place, dear Lord, with the quest for truth that will always remain in your keeping. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we count down to the 12:30 time period, we want to call up Mr. George Michael Ivica. This gentleman has spent many, many years researching different aspects of the assassination of President Kennedy. And as I said earlier, he is one of those devoted individuals who has spent his own time and resources, and the information that he has to share with you is very, very good information for you to take home with you.
Good afternoon. At the conference, the Lancet conference, we heard even more evidence, if we needed that evidence, as to how the assassination occurred. It certainly wasn't a lone assassin. There certainly were more than 4 shots fired, probably 5. There was an incredible cover-up in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And we heard from a dozen researchers about literally tens of thousands of documents now available, clearly indicating that Oswald, probably not involved at all in the assassination, was a patsy manipulated by the national security state through intelligence officers. One researcher after another gave us new evidence that there was a planned and patterned attack on the president in this Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, 40 years ago. I want to call your attention again to the flag. That flag flies at half-mast here in Dallas. On November 22nd, '63, the Battle of Dealey Plaza was lost. The blood of a slain president spilled here, sanctifying this ground, this very ground, as holy and sacred, an American battlefield as filled with pain, as filled with grief, as filled with injustice as any in this country or overseas. We, those of us who have striven for peace and justice, those of us who have striven to answer the ultimate question, why did he die? Why did John F. Kennedy die? We, the researchers and writers, in the life and the death and the legacy of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, know that there are more battles that are still to be fought. The truth is still to be found. And as John F. Kennedy himself said, with history the judge of our deeds, let us go knowing that here on earth, God's work. With history the judge of our deeds, let us go forth knowing that here on earth, God's work is our own. Amen. In 5 minutes or less, the motorcade was on Houston. It moved slowly to incredible crowds. It moved down Houston, turned right, turned in that terrible turn. The clock on the depository read first 12:28, 12:29, 12:30. And then there was a terrible shattering noise, and the life of a martyred president was snuffed out just there. So please let us take a moment, not just of silence, but to pray to sanctify this moment and this land. Thank you. It's amazing, so amazing. Amazing grace, how imagine thousands years, bright shining as the sun. It's amazing, so amazing. It's amazing, so amazing. Amazing grace.
Ladies and gentlemen, Beverly Oliver, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have one quick thing to say. There are a lot of people who commemorate this observance of the assassination of President Kennedy And Deb, there was a group that came here, as they traditionally do every year, and we certainly want to mention them today.
Yes, you may have noticed earlier that there was a procession that came down Elm Street. Those folks were with the Conspiracy Museum, and one of the people that led the procession to put a wreath at the historical marker designating the Dealey Plaza as historical. Well, they don't say anything about the assassination, but it's historical. Something here that happened, was a well-known Texas figure, Billy Solestus, and we're very happy that the Conspiracy Museum participated in our remembrance ceremony today. Thank you, guys. Before we close, we have another Dealey Plaza witness that has come and would like to say a few words, and that's Mr. Ed Hoffman.
Ladies and gentlemen, many of you who have followed some of the documentaries through the last decades will recognize Mr. Hoffman. This gentleman is deaf, but it has not impaired his ability to recount what he saw on November 22nd, 1963. So, very briefly, and some of you a little later through the interpreter may want a little more information, and he does have a book, by the way. We will mention that. Let's find out first, where were you, Mr. Hoffman, on November 22nd, 1963, at this time of the day?
I'm happy to see a lot of people around who thinks that love JFK in spirit and soul. He's happy that God's looking down on us, and he knows, and he's happy. Really continues sadness in his heart. It's hurt a lot for a long time. He's trying to tell the truth that he saw everything, and he knows JFK, his head was blown out in the back, and there's a big hole, and it surprised himself looking, and he just felt sad, bad inside. That means LBJ, president, is just showing off and parading, and people are trying to tell him to calm down. There's a lot of family, and we're sad, and he was hurt inside.
Mr. Hoffman has made a great contribution, and again, if you would like to speak to him through his interpreter, you are allowed to do that. They would be very happy to accommodate you. Another gentleman, very quickly, as we get very near the 1230 time period, when this tragic event happened 4 decades ago, there was a gentleman that was standing on the other street, I believe it was Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Tague, he is the other man who was wounded on November 22nd, 1963.
I really don't know what to say. I'm amazed at the crowd that's here. This is my first visit on November 22nd in 40 years. I want to thank you.
Thank you so much. James Tague also has a book that accounts what he saw, what he went through on November 22nd, 1963, and he is the keynote speaker at our Lancer banquet tonight. If you would like to talk one-on-one, I know that there is some media here, Mr. Tague, that would like to speak with you. Well, Deborah, we must be very close to the mark. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's appropriate because we are at, depending on what your watch says, either at the 1230 time period, maybe past it, maybe a few seconds before. But I will ask Deborah to give us some conclusion to our observance today.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Mr. Tague, for coming. As I look out here and see all of your faces, I have to congratulate you. Congratulations for being here. You did a brave thing today. Thank can't ignore us today. They cannot ignore us today. That is a great thing and a brave thing, and I thank you for coming. I have to ask you, though, can you carry on tomorrow? Will you carry on a week from now and a month from now when it's not a major anniversary? Please continue this work. Please help heal the world and our nation. We must have the truth in the history books. We must have the truth in the media. You know the truth. Help me carry that torch for President Kennedy. Help us get the truth out every day, not just today. Thank you again for coming. It means so much to everyone. I just can't tell you what it feels like to be standing here looking at you. I have to close with something that we all know, and if you'd like to repeat it with me, please do. At President Kennedy's first inauguration, I wish there would have been a second, he gave us these famous words. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. You did that today. You did for your country. Thank you. Thank you all.
Please remember, when you get back home, get into your laptops or PCs and hit the website www.jfklancer.com, and it will direct you to just about anything that you're looking for in the way of this information. And it's all free. Doesn't cost you anything but your time. Thank you so much. We thank you for coming. And I know that all Americans thank you as well.
I got it.
We're here with the Coalition on Political Assassination. We are the nation's serious research community. This is our 9th year of conferences here. We have one going on with the real researchers in these cases. We're responsible for the release of 6.5 million pages of government classified documents under the JFK Records Act, the largest release of classified documents in American history. Came from the work of the Coalition on Political Assassinations that helped to draft that act and implement it. We're now working on an act to get the records loose on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and death, which is still buried by this government, as well as other records on murders that happened in that period. We studied JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, Dr. Malcolm X's assassination, and other political assassinations. We're made up of forensic and ballistic and medical experts, of academicians and authors, of independent and serious researchers. I've been coming out here on the grassy knoll since the late 1960s. I came every year with researcher Penn Jones, who held a moment of silence at 12:30 to commemorate this, and he asked me personally, when he got too sick to do it any longer, to continue that tradition. And we came here every year except one year. He came to D.C. and we went to the Arlington National Cemetery to the Kennedy grave and held it there. And we came out today to do the moment of silence and to be here to commemorate what happened, but also to challenge this country to become a democracy. Because what was killed on November 22nd, 1963 was not just a president or an individual. Truth was killed and hope was killed. And a government that responded to popular movements was killed. And a hope for democracy in this country was taken instead by a military-industrial intelligence complex that President Eisenhower warned before Kennedy came into office would rise into power if it wasn't held back.
And Kennedy said he didn't want a Pax Americana like the neocons that live in the White House now and take us into what we're told will be a war that won't end in our lifetime, and a war with 60 countries, and a permanent war economy. If you want to know why you have a deficit in this country, it's the Pentagon. That's where the money goes. You can't cut taxes and increase the cost of the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies and not cut social services and education and welfare and health and medicine and anything in this country that could be really developed. And the irony is that we live in a time of absolute surplus where everyone on earth can be fed and clothed and housed and interneted and transported, and instead, because that wealth is concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, we have a government and a foreign policy whose agenda is to go after more of that wealth, to go after the resources that create that wealth, and to put our country and other countries at war perpetually in order to do that. But we are what's left of democracy in the world. We have the most potential of any country in the world to make democracy work. We have a strength that they are afraid of in this country, which is why they go to the lengths they do on television to deny what we're saying, and in the scrapping of the Constitution since 9/11. And they haven't told you the truth about 9/11. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I know that it's the most restricted airspace in the United States. I know that when a small commercial plane goes off course anywhere near that space, because it did just this week, they send up an interceptor. But I was watching TV locally in D.C. and was told a half an hour before the plane hit the Pentagon that a plane was coming to Washington, D.C. Now, if I knew, they damn well knew. They have F-16 fighters at Anacostia Naval Air Station. They have F-18s at Andrews Air Force Base just to the south of us. They don't have to go down to Langley, Virginia, 130 miles away to get a fighter jet up. Or if they do, they don't have a defense of the United States. They said we didn't have a mechanism. I sat on the damn mechanism when I was 10 years old. My parents who worked at the Pentagon took me out for lunch in the courtyard, and I sat on a silver box. And my dad said, "Get the hell over there." I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's a surface-to-air missile port." In 1999, I talked to the head of security at the Pentagon. He pointed up, he told me they were on Delta Alert because of bomb threat calls, their highest form of alert. They didn't go to Delta on 9/11. They only went to Charlie. So on phone calls, I got Delta Alert 1999. He points to the roof of the building and he says, "And we have camera and radars up there so they don't run a plane into the building." I am quoting you. So they don't run a plane into the building. They knew that planes could be used as weapons. They knew that Al-Qaeda had used planes as weapons. When Bush went to the Genoa summit, they made sure no planes could fly over the area. And the pilots were quoted that took off from Langley to defend us. In the book, Among the Heroes, you know what they said? They said they were scrambled to go to New York. And they were asked on the way to look over and see if the Pentagon had been hit. If they can't defend the Pentagon, what did they do with the $13 trillion they took since the end of World War II? If they can't defend their own building, how can they defend you? And if they didn't defend it, then they let it come. And why did they let it come? And what's happened since to this country? And what direction is this country headed in? You don't even know yet who was on that plane. Do you know that 8 people have come forward in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and said, "That's me, that's my ID, that's my picture, I wasn't in America, I wasn't on that plane." You don't know yet what happened on 9/11, and we're after this commission now that's supposed to be studying it to make them ask the right questions, just as we should have been on top of the Warren Commission in the 1960s, and more of us done that. But you can't have democracy or truth unless you demand it. If you want a democracy, you have to make it a democracy. And Jefferson said that there is no safe repository for the powers of a society except the people themselves. And he said if you think them unable to exercise their discretion in a wholesome fashion, which means you think they're too stupid, the solution is not to take their power from them, he said, but to inform their discretion. He said some say that man is not ready to govern himself. He said, how is it then that others are ready and can govern? But if you want a democracy, you have to make it a democracy. And the first step is to take back your history. Because what's buried by the Warren Commission and this classification system since the end of World War II is American history. There's 27 buildings in Suitland, Maryland. 27, an acre in size, underground, and they house just the military classified archives since the end of World War II. 27 acres of buried documents and history in this country. You wonder why they say people abroad hate the United States. It's because you don't know the history of the United States and what they've done in those countries in your name for the last 50 years. If you did know it, you'd understand damn well why people are angry at the United States. For every single dictator this country's ever taken out, they've put in 80 dictators. If you think they went over there because they were mad with Saddam Hussein, they put Saddam Hussein into power there. Just as they took Kennedy out of power here when he didn't go along with their plans. He was pulling out of Vietnam. He was working to end the economy of the Soviet Union. He wanted to end the Cold War. He wanted to end the arms race. He was threatening to get rid of the oil tax depletion allowance, which was a $27 billion tax write-off in 1963. $27 billion in 1963. That's real money. Not like the $87 billion now. That's real money, and it was money that financed elections in this country. He said in October that he was going to go in and scatter the CIA to the four winds because he knew that they were lying to the president of what they did. There were many reasons they wanted to kill him, and this death came, as Ben Jones knew, as Garrison knew, and all the early researchers knew. Not from some anti-Castro Cubans on the ground, not from some mafia goons, not even from the CIA. It came at the highest levels. It came from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This was a military coup d'etat. The Strategic Air Command bomber pilots I interviewed in the air when Kennedy was killed got wind of that news, and they went for their code books that would tell them what they were to do in an emergency and whether they were going to nuclear war, and they did not, to a plane, and they have them up on regular 8-hour stretch 3 times a day, set of planes. None of those planes had a code book aboard. That's the defense of the United States compromised in that hour. There's no mafia goon or anti-Castro Cuban that could take those code books off that plane. The only person, in fact, who knew exactly how to do that was the person who designed the system to put them on. He's named Curtis LeMay. He hated the Kennedys. He said, we want to get those sons of bitches out of there. They were in the way. He didn't like it that they wouldn't go to nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And he didn't like it that Kennedy wouldn't bomb Vietnam back to the Stone Age. And they thought that Kennedy was going exactly the opposite direction. He was talking about normalizing relations with Cuba. And they certainly didn't want that. There's money in war. There's profit in war. There's social control in war. And a permanent military economy grabs that money and puts it in the hands of a few people, and it's in their interest to continue wars. So when Kennedy and Martin Luther King, a year to the day before his death, came out against the war in Vietnam, they went out and stopped those people because they knew that they represented a hope for change to this society. And they killed that hope in '63 and in 1968. And they killed it for a specific reason, because they don't want us to hope. They want us to believe that we are powerless, that we can't stand up to them. Yeah, we killed the president. What do you want to do about it? We can sure as hell kill you. But they can't kill all of us. There's more of us than we can think, and we can make it into a democracy. And if we don't, the nightmare that will result from the path that we've been on since 9/11 will make the Kennedy assassination look like a Sunday school picnic. We're in charge. We make it into a democracy. That's what we have to do. Well, not if you sit there and say you're not in control, but if you understand you're in control, then you take back the taxes. You allocate them yourself. You directly decide what kind of policies you want, and you don't rely on representatives that they can blackmail and bully and tool it. You don't need a representative. You only need a representative when you have a horse.
The handheld mic.
That's what they had in the 1700s. They had a horse. That was communication and transportation. You're in the 21st century. You can communicate directly. You have a commonwealth of a media that you can take back from these corporations. You can openly debate policies. This is what George Washington said. He said there shouldn't be political parties. He said policies belong to the people as a whole.
I connect them
And
together.
he said when a party is formed, it puts it back in the hands of a few. Jefferson said there's only two parties, no matter what they call themselves. Those who want to take power from the people and put it in the hands of the elite. He said those are the aristocrats. And those who want to take it from the elite and put it in the hands of the people, he said that's the Democrats. But he said if you have a democratic government and you have a democratic constitution and it functions, you don't need a democratic party. You don't need a party. You don't need a representative. You need to control your own lives in a democratic fashion. You need to decentralize the control in this country and take back your lives because it's been stolen from you. And it's been stolen from you to understand how much power you have. There's no one else in the world they're afraid of besides the American people. You'd think they were afraid of the Soviet Union? You'd think they're afraid of Castro in Cuba? You'd think they're afraid of the third world? No, it's us. It's us, the space between our ears. This is the power that can change the world. The American people, and the only ones that have the wiggle room left to do it, or the lack of control over the people left to do it. So if you want to change it, you can. It belongs to you. It's your life, it's your country. But if you don't want it, if you want to sit silent and you want to hand it to them, they're showing you, like they did in the last election, what they think of you and your vote. Take your vote back and make it a vote for the policies under which your life is ruled. Make democracy a system where the people in it decide what happens to them and they make decisions about the effects of things on their own lives. Nobody can represent that. I can't represent you. Why would you try to represent me? I can't represent the people that are listening to me here. How could I? I'd have to split my vote 500 different ways. Let's represent ourselves directly. When we pay tax, let's allocate that tax as the last page of our tax code. Make it into a democracy, because otherwise, if you don't get it, don't change this system. It's not going to destroy just America. It's going to destroy the entire planet.
I had to jump.
Jail in 1967. Basically, what we're doing is to collector in Florida are Ruby Road by Lonely Rewards. Goes on. Says, I know you will think I'm crazy to keep this note for a later date. And Alabama says, yeah, it's been 29 years. So that's it. I should have stopped. They're over there in the grass looking for this bullet.